to the Liberated Mind podcast, where we have in-depth conversations with experts in mindset, finance, health and wellness, nutrition, relationships, natural law, and so much more to help us break free from past limiting beliefs and subconscious programming so we can create a well-rounded life of success and abundance for ourselves and the people we love. Our promise to you is that you will positively benefit from every episode and every guest we bring on. We are here to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Welcome to the Liberated Mind podcast. I'm your host, C. Michael Pickens. Today's guest is someone who embodies the exact transformation this show is all about. Eli Bowman is a top-selling author, certified Aspire Tour speaker, and seven-figure entrepreneur who went from rock-bottom self-destruction to building a multi-billion-dollar company with over 40 employees. But here's what makes his story different. He discovered that even massive business success felt empty when it wasn't aligned with his authentic purpose. As a master in neuro-linguistic programming, Eli has cracked the code on unconscious programming and created frameworks that help high performers identify and eliminate the borrowed values and limiting beliefs that keep them trapped in someone else's definition of success. His upcoming book, Rewrite the Program, reveals the exact system he uses to help people bridge the gap between their current reality and their dream life. If you've ever felt like you're achieving goals that don't actually fulfill you, or if you're ready to stop living on autopilot and start operating from your authentic power, this conversation is going to be a game changer. Please welcome Eli Bowman.
Wow, that was so good, dude. Thank you. I got to try to live up to all that now. Yeah.
Dude, it's who you are, man. You embody that. So let's jump right into it, right? So you went from rock bottom to building a seven-figure company. Right. What was the specific moment you realized your self-destructive patterns weren't character flaws, but programming that you could rewrite?
That's a great question. Believe it or not, I had a little bit of business success before I realized any of this. But it actually took a business crisis moment where my largest customer at the time decided to just pull the rug out from under us, like days after conversation that we were going to scale together. Total like right hook out of nowhere, never saw it coming. And so that was a bit of a crisis moment for me. And of all people in my life, my tax strategist, someone who I always just assumed would be about the numbers and the data and whatnot, she said, hey, I think you need to get your mind right. There's this event going on in Dallas it's a week long, and it's about neuro-linguistic programming. Have you heard of NLP? I was like, yeah, I've heard of it, with like negotiations and communications and things. And so I said, a week's a long time. That's a big, long event, but I need something because my mind's not right after all this. So I decided to go down there, and I'm sitting there, I'm waiting to be poured into, right? I'm just waiting to receive from the people that are speaking and presenting. And just a few minutes into the event, I learned that it is actually a certification event for coaches and therapists and counselors. And I looked around, and like everyone in that room but me was like a coach or a counselor or a consultant, something like that. And I was just like, okay, I got to make a decision here. I'm either just going to go home and leave, or I stay. Like, I booked the hotel room, I've got the flights, I got the rental car. Like, I should just stay. Why not? My wife was supportive of the whole week, so I just went. It ended up changing my life. And so, to answer your question, it was really after that certification event where I became certified in neuro-linguistic programming that I realized, and it answered a lot of questions that I had about myself, because up to that point, I was really kind of going through the motions because of these external pressures and these things that were placed on me that it wasn't coming from like a place of authenticity inside of me. So that body of work is what that's the answer. That body of work is really what opened my eyes to, oh my gosh, there's this thing called conditioning and programming. And so that's what it was.
So you were at an event to get certified to do this with other people, and then you pretty much got educated on how to do it with yourself, right? That's what it sounds like.
That's right. And I took that education as far as it could go. And in order to get the master designation, which I have now, you have to be a client as well. So you have to kind of go through these breakthrough moments as a client in order to even be considered a master in neurolinguistic programming. And so, I've been on both sides. I've got clients now that I work with, and we've made some huge strides with those folks. And I've been a client myself. And I'm continually working with NLP experts on myself, because if you have a coach or a mentor that doesn't have a coach or a mentor, run.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the thing that I look at, is professional athletes. Let's just say, professional baseball player, right? He's got a hitting coach, he's got a pitching coach, he's got a nutritionist, he's got a stretching coach, he's got weight training coach, he's got all these different coaches. And if you want to be a high performer, in any aspect of your life, you're going to have to need a coach, right?
100%.
So with that said, what are some of the biggest misconceptions high performers have about why they can't break through their current ceiling?
Yeah, it's one of those things, Mike, where it's like, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And so you have high achievers who have done well in the past, and maybe they have some business success. I have a lot of clients like this who are people that have had great traditional success, what we would call success, but they still feel limited because they want to take it to another level, but they can't. They seem to just stay where they are. And T. Harv Eker, who's an author, he wrote a book. You may have heard of it. It's called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. It's one of the first kind of finance, personal development books I ever read in my early 20s, and it really has stuck with me. And in there, he talks about how everyone has a financial thermostat. Okay, well, what does that mean, Eli? Well, a thermostat's set to a certain temperature, and it doesn't really, if it gets a little hotter, it comes back down. If you got a fancy one, if it gets cooler, it goes back up. You don't have to mess with it. We all have a financial thermostat. If we kind of look back at our lives, we kind of see and notice that our bank account typically, maybe not all the time, but generally speaking, it's usually floating around the same amount all the time, or like within a range of amounts, and that's kind of where our thermostat is. And high achievers are no different. They just know how their thermostat's just set a little higher on how much money they have at any given time. So even they have to look back in their past and go, what is preventing me from moving forward? Because if it were in the conscious mind, Mike, like we would just be able to figure it out, because we could just deduce the route or the path to overcome those things, but it's not. It's in the unconscious mind. And you can't just snap a finger and fix the unconscious mind. It takes really intentional work.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you talk about the financial thermostat, that reminds me of a concept called learned helplessness, right? And you see this a lot of times in people that have grown up in the welfare system, right? They're used to the government taking care of them, and that is their financial thermostat, food stamps and housing assistance and so on and so forth. And they're kind of stuck at that level because they've learned helplessness through programming, right? It's kind of same situation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we see it just permeates in society, and it looks several different ways. That's a great example of one of the ways it looks. It really is like learned helplessness. That's a great map across.
Yeah, absolutely. So you also talk about something called the borrowed values programs. I've seen you posting about it. Can you walk us through how successful entrepreneurs unknowingly chase goals that aren't actually theirs?
Yeah, this goes back to what I call in my book, Rewrite the Program. I kind of lay this framework out, and it's kind of a quadrant. There are 4 quadrants here, and they kind of go in order. And the first of those quadrants is what I call the conveyor belt quadrant. And as you can imagine, conveyor belt, it's kind of the system, conformity. Here are the societal and cultural expectations. That is a very strong current that is almost impossible to swim against if you don't know what you're doing. So borrowed values really are what they sound like. It is a label to put on the way that we're conditioned to prioritize certain outcomes in our lives, right? Like we prioritize in the West, when you're done with high school, what's the next logical step, Michael?
College.
And then after college, that's what they say. After college, what's the next logical step on the conveyor belt? What are you doing after college?
Oh, you're getting married or you're getting a job, right?
Yes.
Having a couple kids.
You don't even have to think about this. This is just, this because this is the world around us. This is the norm. This is the conveyor belt. So borrowed values are essentially what some people might call their core values, but they're not actually their core values. They're the core values that have been installed into them from externalities like culture and society and religion and family and friends. So there's so many influential groups in our lives, entities in our lives that put these values into us. We're conditioned by them, they're installed, and they're borrowed. They're not even ours.
Yep.
And the interest is high, right? Like it's expensive because the cost is a lot of times our happiness and our inner peace, because we're living someone else's values, not necessarily the values that are actually aligned with who we really are. And when we are able to navigate that and find what our values actually are, that's where a lot of happiness and peace lies. But it takes deconstructing the borrowed values that have been installed.
Absolutely. This reminds me of growing up. My parents put a huge emphasis on getting good grades in school. And that wasn't my thing. They both went to college. They wanted me to go to college. I just had no desire to do that. So when I became an entrepreneur, there's a lot of imposter syndrome, because I was programmed that my value came from grades and then going to college and then working a normal job, becoming a teacher, an electrician, or something like that. So it was a lot of unconscious programming that I had, and borrowed values for sure, that were running deep in my subconscious that I had to overcome. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Most of our audience on the show are high achievers and who think they've got their mindset handled. How do you help them see the unconscious programming that's still running their lives?
Well, if they could see it, they would iron it out. But because that's what high achievers do. They identify a problem and they try to attack the problem and bring values and then maybe scale that to other people who have the same problem. That's what entrepreneurs do. It's kind of how we're built, right? But the problem with this is it's so pervasive because it's just buried under your conscious mind. It's as simple as this. The conscious mind is concerned with everything you think about. If you're thinking about it, it is in the conscious mind. But 90% of neuroactivity is in the unconscious mind. And so these are things that you're not aware of by definition. And so I would tell a high achiever, I would say, are you living the life of your dreams? Well, not exactly. All right, why? Well, I don't know. I guess I just need more time to have my plans roll out. Okay. Well, why haven't you rolled out your plans yet? Why aren't you further down the path? Well, gee, I don't know. Right. So you can always back into, hey, look, you might be a high achiever, but you're not done. You haven't arrived. And if you believe you have arrived, someone sold you something, because there is no arriving. It's finding a place of peace in the journey and just continuing to move forward, knowing that there's no real finish line. It's just enjoying the race. So
enjoying the process, enjoying the
process, right? Enjoying the journey. Yeah. It's not the destination.
Awesome. You mentioned that our resistance and procrastination aren't character flaws, but guidance system. Can you explain how that works?
I can. When we procrastinate, and let's think about what it means to procrastinate. I mean, a lot of times these are very simple, mundane activities that we just are like, I don't want to make that call. I don't want to set the appointment at the doctor. Or I could go get groceries tomorrow. I'm tired. It's after work. I'll just order out again, right? So these are things that we kind of put off because they're menial, and that's just one category. But there's another category of procrastination which is kind of like larger. It's like larger pebbles in the pond. I mean, those might be small pebbles. This is like throwing a rock in the pond, like maybe a career pivot, or a conversation you need to have with a loved one that you've been putting off for months, maybe years. These types of procrastinations are the reason we don't do them is because there's dissonance internally from an ethics and value perspective. All right. So if we just focus on like career, let's just take the career ecosystem here for a second, Michael. If someone is in a job they don't like, they may procrastinate getting another job in their field because what they do doesn't really align with who they are. And so the work it takes to shift a career, like to get a brand new job, if it's a lateral move, like in the same career or industry, there's no fire behind that because you already don't really like what you do. So if I were to kind of make this succinct, I would say this: procrastination is a signal that you're not doing what you actually want to do. Because if what you needed to get done was aligned and like fired you up, would you procrastinate? No, you wouldn't. You would just get it done because you love the idea of pursuing that and getting it done and making progress. So when you're doing something you love, procrastination kind of melts away. Maybe you still have those little menial things that you might procrastinate on, but generally speaking, you don't procrastinate anymore because what you're doing fills you with joy because it matches your values. Does that make sense? So procrastination is a signal that what you're doing is not aligned with your values.
Gotcha. What if you are doing something that is aligned with your values, but you still have that resistance or procrastination coming up?
So I would say then, if you're truly happy with what you're doing, if you feel like, oh yeah, this is the path for me, like this feels good, like I resonate with what I'm doing, this is something I could see myself doing for years, I have joy in this work. If you still find that you're procrastinating, that is the time to work on past programming. If that were my client, if I were working with someone and they loved what they were doing, they felt like they were in the industry that they were doing, they were having joy in that, but they were still procrastinating, inaction was plaguing them, I would go back into their past. We would do what's called timeline therapy. Now remember, I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm a neuro-linguistic programming coach. So I want to make sure it's clear. When I say timeline therapy, I am certified in that, master certified in timeline therapy, but it's different than talk therapy. So I would use timeline therapy in this case, and I would go back to their past, and I would, using their unconscious mind and some NLP techniques, I would try to identify what might be standing in the way and then delete that and help them uninstall that so that they could actually move forward. And I've done that successfully many times with clients.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that feedback. So the next question I have for you is about the RAS, the reticular activating system, and why people don't see opportunity coming into their life, or they don't recognize it in front of them.
The best way for me to describe this is to borrow a part from Atomic Habits, which James Clear, I believe, is the author of that, and he says this in the book, and I may not get this exactly right, but generally speaking, he says we do not rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And I want people to really think about that, because take the Boston Marathon, okay? When people line up, those serious contenders, the people that do marathons professionally for a living, whatever, they all line up. What goal do they all have? To win the marathon. Mm-hmm. They all think that they can, but how many winners are there? There's just one winner. In the open category, whatever, like the pro category, there's just one winner. And well, what happened? Why didn't everyone win? Didn't everyone prepare? Well, here's the thing. People didn't rise to their goals. They fell to their systems. So what was their preparation process? What was their diet like? What was their mental state like? What was their coach working on them with? Did they stretch? How was their sleep the night before? There's so many elements that are in the system of preparing for a marathon. And we don't just magically win because our goal is to win. We fall to the level of our systems. Now, to the reticular activating system, it's a filter. And if we have realistic goals, we might hit realistic goals and we might not. Because when we have like realistic, practical goals, it feels good to achieve them, sure. But how much does it move the needle? So the answer to kind of breaking through is to increase your, what I call RAS expansion. Well, how do you do that? It is by 10xing your goals, by setting goals that are so big, that are really truly 10x what they were before, that you have no choice but to improve your systems in order to achieve those goals. Do you see what I'm doing here? So by changing your goals, you're elevating your systems. So when you inevitably fall to the level of your systems, the systems are better than they were before, and now your achievement is higher and your production is better.
Gotcha. So you talk about something else called active loop engines. How do successful people create self-reinforcing cycles of excellence while some other people might say stuck in mediocrity loops?
With active loop engines, I think about ancient Rome. You know, the same roads were used for so long. The chariots and the wagons, they developed these deep grooves into the road. And so over time, wagons and chariots began to be made according to the same exact dimensions. So every chariot and every wagon, it was the same width because the grooves were uniform. And would you, believe it or not, the width of those has influenced the size of our roads today, like really around the world. So it's incredible. And that's just a testament to like what these active loop engines are. Here's that map across. Because these wagons and these chariots made these grooves, when you get in the grooves, it's hard to get out. It's like a railroad track. When a train is on the tracks, it's not really deviating. It's staying on the tracks. Active loop engines are when it's four elements. It's our unconscious mind informs our belief system, and our belief systems inform the inputs that we bring in, like our media, our friends, social media, what we read, etc., listen to. And that informs the fourth thing, which is our outputs, or what I call our action momentum system. And what we actually outwardly do, believe it or not, reinforces our unconscious programming. So it's this self-perpetuating loop, or an engine, so to speak. And it's like, okay, well, how then do you take someone who's in an engine of mediocrity? So there's just, maybe they're a victim and they're always a victim, or the system is always rigged against them, or negative things always happen to them. We all know people like this, who are either always sick, who are always poor, or who are always negative. Well, they're in these self-perpetuating loops, and your heart goes out to them because you just want to help them. The easiest way to improve the loop you're in is to change your inputs first. So change what you're listening to, change the books you read, change the people you're around, change the algorithm in your social media, delete stuff that's negative, like stuff, and tell the algorithm that you like good, positive, uplifting stuff. That's the first thing you can do. But the problem is you can't go from like a mediocre loop to an excellence loop without elevating all four elements. And because the unconscious mind is so pervasive, it takes a special focused work, and you have to know how to access it. And that's where my expertise comes in. And that's why I'm writing the book. And that's why I'm trying to help people and get this message out there that unconscious work it's like a learning curve. You kind of have to know how to do it. And that's the message I'm trying to get out to the world, to be honest.
Awesome. So what's the difference between someone who can rebuild wealth after losing everything versus someone who just stays broke? Is it really just mindset?
Good question. I mean, no, it's not just mindset. People who have amassed a lot of wealth by creating systems that generate wealth, they could lose it all, and they're the ones that will gain it right back. And here's why. They don't just have moments where they have money. They have money-making programming. So they've done the work to change their programs to be able to make money. So, and they've changed their inputs. They've learned skills, right? They know how to raise funds. They know how to, for example, if they're a real estate professional, they know how to find properties. They know how to find the money, hard money, whatever it takes. They have the relationships already. So their bank account can go to zero, and they can go to the apparatus by which they gained their wealth previously, and they can rebuild it again. So they're in an excellence loop. They're in a wealth generating loop. Whereas people who are always trying to get to that first million, and that's a lot of us, a lot of people are trying to get to their first million. It's a struggle because you just don't have the same loop that the very wealthy people who have made that wealth before. However, you can get there. It is possible. You just got to keep going.
So it sounds like that it's not just a skill that someone learns, but maybe a multitude of skills along with subconscious reprogramming, right?
I think you're right. It is a multitude of skills. It is wealth generation skills. It is definitely mindset. That's a huge part of it. But their unconscious is working in their favor rather than working against them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of leads into my next question, the path of purpose. Walk us through your path of purpose framework, and how does someone move from the unconscious programming to actually living their authentic mission?
This is the chief part of my book. My book spells out the path of purpose, and to me, this is my flagship framework. The path of purpose is this. It's the linear journey that someone goes through from birth to present day. The path of purpose explains the conveyor belt and all that conformity and what it looks like to conform. But then it also spells out what happens when we've done all of the things we're supposed to do. If you're a listener, have you ever thought to yourself, I went to school, check. I went to college, check. I got married, check. Had kids, check. Got the house, check. Got the cars, check. Going to church, maybe, or I'm spiritual, or I'm I have, you know what I mean? Like check, right? So I've checked all the boxes. Where's my joy? Where's my happiness? Where's my peace? Well, there's dissonance there. And the reason is because all of the check boxes you checked were not made by you. They were made by something else. And you borrowed those because, of course you did. You didn't know what else to do. It's not your fault. But when you experience that dissonance, then comes this period of deconstruction, which is the second quadrant of the path of purpose. And you got to take that stuff apart, like we mentioned earlier. And it's in taking that apart, it's in the pile of ashes that the phoenix becomes when it burns up and dies. It's from those ashes that the phoenix is reborn. And so in order to express who you really are, you've got to deconstruct who you used to be. The old you, to get a little Jungian here, the old you has to die. You got to do that shadow work, and then you've got to find out who the real you is, and be willing and brave enough to embrace it. Because if you're not, you will slide back to conformity, because it might just be too hard, too scary to express who you really are. And that's what I call enlightenment, is when you know who you are, and you have the courage and bravery to actually express who you are out in the world. And then the last piece of the path of purpose is the impact piece. Now, I believe, this is just my philosophy, I'm not saying I'm right. I believe that when we embrace who we really are, Michael, and I think we have a duty and a responsibility to pull others up with us. That's just my opinion. I think that is one of the reasons why we're here, is to lift each other up. And to me, that's a big part of purpose. So when we land on who we authentically are, and we have the courage to live that and express that out in the world, I think a natural byproduct of that is influence and impact. And it becomes our duty to kind of maximize that in a way. And so to me, I'm in that phase. I'm in that phase of trying to maximize my impact.
Yep.
And some people are comfortable with just having influence of their friends and their family, and that's fine. I'm never going to encourage someone to do something that's way outside of what they might naturally feel called to. But there are plenty of people that I will work with, and that will be within the sound of my voice, that I will challenge to push their comfort zone way out and actually scale up their amplification of their voice, their own voice, to lift others. Because the world, and you know this, Michael, you're doing this too, the world needs this so much right now. It needs authentic people who know why they're here, reaching down and pulling people up.
Absolutely. You know, I kind of was in that position too, because I was procrastinating finishing my book, right? It took me 4 years to do it until, a few months back, I was just like fed up. I'm like, I just got to do it. It was like a monkey on my back holding me down. And it got worse and worse every single day, knowing that I had this infrastructure in my book that I haven't finished. And it was just finally letting go of that resistance and then diving into it 110% to just make it happen. And now that it's released, it's like I feel liberated, right? Well, it's called Liberate Your Mind, but I feel it.
Yeah. You did it. And now it's out there. And now, let me ask you this, if I may. Sure. Now that the book is out, which, by the way, congratulations on that. And what I've read of it so far is really good. You're just a really gifted writer. Now that it's out, Michael, do you kind of feel this inclination to kind of amplify your voice even more now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's why I'm talking to you.
I love that.
So a couple more questions before I let you go. If you could reprogram one limiting belief that most entrepreneurs carry, what would it be?
It would be the belief that the lie that you're an imposter. So people experience imposter syndrome. It's like, okay, well, what is that, Eli? And imposter syndrome is when success is new or on the immediate horizon, and there's something inside of you that doesn't believe you're worthy of it, and then sabotages the success. I think that's a big lie. I think imposter syndrome is rooted in insecurity, and those insecurities are rooted in unconscious programs. And so that's why I believe my work is so important. Is the answer, in my opinion, the answer to eliminating imposter syndrome is to figure out who the heck you really are and to accept who you are and accept that exactly who you are is good enough and worthy of the success that you're experiencing. That's how you eliminate it. But it takes an increased level of self-awareness. And if I could say the one magic pill, the one magic ingredient to making real big progress against your unconscious programming that doesn't serve you, it is to raise your self-awareness. It is the single most important element of what I do, is simply helping people raise their self-awareness so they know exactly who they are, so that they know what they're up against. And just doing that piece is enough to chip away at some of that unconscious programming that is sabotaging someone's life.
Awesome. Eli, thank you so much for joining me on the show. Where can people find you? Where can they find your upcoming book?
I'm on all the major social medias. If you go to Facebook, just type in Eli Bowman. You should see my ugly mug there. There's a blue check mark. I'm on Twitter, Eli Bowman. Instagram, Eli.Bowman. I'm on LinkedIn. I have a YouTube channel. It's kind of stale, but we're working on it. But you can also go to my website, EliBowman.com, and you can reach me there and learn a little bit more about me.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you again for coming on the show. I wish you great success with your upcoming book and your coaching program. So.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate you having me. I'd love talking to you every time. Look, if there's ever another chance for me to come on, I would really love to. You just say the word.
Yeah, let's get you on in like 6 months after your book's published. We could talk more about your success and what people are getting from it. So, looking forward to that.
Would love to. Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you. What if the only thing holding you back was a belief? The Liberated Mind book helps you reprogram your subconscious so you can finally break free from limiting beliefs. Can't stop procrastinating? You'll learn how to install new mental habits that stick. Struggling with self-doubt? You'll discover how to silence that inner critic with daily tools and rewiring techniques. Having a hard time controlling your eating and drinking habits? Get in shape, release excess weight, and grow self-esteem. From building confidence to healing emotional blocks, this book shows you how to create improvements that last. After you finish reading or listening to the audiobook, join our Liberated Mind Mastermind community for consistent support and encouragement on your journey, and take part in our quarterly 90-day self-improvement challenges. You can purchase the book on Amazon or at liberatedmindpodcast.com.